to give some hours to put some nails in a wall or take down a wall and strip the nails out of that wood, and reuse the wood or something. Try to work out a way where you have a contractor who has the plans and he says, okay, you do this, you do that, you do the plumbing, get the electrician in, make sure everything is set. But if we keep the costs down, get a group of people together, like maybe rotate it in, almost like an artist co-op where, people volunteer a little bit, because it seems like a lot of people are looking for things to do, possibly, and to contribute, maybe not the funds, but the resources. You say 75,000, that's a limit, but if we could do it for 35,000, and it probably wouldn't be the same, besides the library, all the other services that might be needed. I'm very good at repairing old things and trying to make them new. I just, great ideas. Just have a committee or somebody that could interject a way of keeping costs down. Because I'm telling you, like myself, taxes, I was concerned after the assessment. It wasn't as bad as what I thought it was. And sometimes we see things, not that clear up front until you say, hey, let's step back. Maybe there's another way to approach this. And I think it would, like, right across the board with everything, have an idea, interject something new instead of saying, okay, this is how much, if we can keep costs down. Because, even myself, like making ends meet is very difficult, and keeping my head above the water. And I'm sure the town is feeling that way. All I could see is expenditure, expenditure, expenditure. And it's going to hurt in the end. There are things we could do with the fire department, I guess, the police department, reuse the building for whatever purpose. But I just thought I'd bring that in like a little, ray of sunshine. Maybe there's something we could do that will reduce the cost. Who cares if it's a 2x4 that's got nail holes in it already? It's going to be covered up with plaster and board anyways. Thank you.
Mr. Moderator?
Yes.
I'm on the building committee for the library, and I'd love Mr. Fowler to keep that thought, hold that thought for another few months or so, because this is a public-private venture, joint venture, and so the fundraising committee, I'm sure, is very interested in donations in kind, that kind of thing.
Thank you. Mr. Wood.
That's a great idea. My name is Bernie, and I'd like to be the treasurer.
Is there further discussion on Article 33? That will bring Article 33 to a vote. Article 33 is to put $75,000 in the capital reserve fund for the library expansion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Article 33 passes. Article 34, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $55,317 for the below-listed agencies. Animal Control Agreement with Humane Society, $6,000. North Country Council, $4,267. Main Street Plymouth, Inc., $3,000. Baker River Watershed, $200. Pammy Baker Home Health Agency, $10,000. Plymouth Regional Free Clinic, $2,000. Grafton County Senior Citizens, $10,000. Tri-County Community Action, $3,500. Voices Against Violence, $3,000. Pemmy Youth Center, $3,000. Genesis Lakes Region Mental Health, $3,000. Mid-State Health, $3,000. Katy, $3,000. Conservation Commission, $1,350. Is there a motion? Is there a second? Was that a second? Article 34 has been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? Mr. Ahern.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Omer Ahern from here in Plymouth. I served on the subcommittee for the Budget Committee on these nonprofits for the first time. And the one thing that I would suggest that the Board of Selectmen do, and Mrs. Moorhead, I served with her on that committee, subcommittee, is to have a form. Thank you. Have a uniform form for all of the folks that are applying for money under the nonprofits. so that we can be a little more understanding and kind of be able to compare apples and apples and so on. So make it a little bit easier in trying to make recommendations to the Budget Committee. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Ahern.
What did that subcommittee come up with for recommendations, seeing how nobody from the Budget Committee is here tonight?
Well, there is a member of the subcommittee. Is that a question for Homer Ahern?
I'd be a member for the subcommittee.
Mr. Moderator, unfortunately, at the time that the final figures were being done, there was a personal loss in my family, and I do not have the figures here to be able to answer that question. I apologize. But this was the time that my mother was passing away, and I did attend the committee meeting and did some things, but in terms of the final figures, maybe Mrs. Moorhead could answer that question.
Yeah, I could address that. The Budget Committee came in for the total. We had over $85,000 worth of requests for nonprofits. So the Budget Committee had looked at that and gone through their, the nonprofit organization had gone through it and came up with a total of $27,700. The board felt at the time that that they had done a very good job and had gone through things very thoroughly, but the board realized under this economy that these agencies will be under a little bit more stress, and we have been able to come a little under our budget, so we thought that at the time that we would appropriate more accordingly. So we came up with a total for of $43,500, which is more than, it's about $10,000 more than we did last year. So those are the numbers.
Ms. Moorhead. Yes. Mr. Cushing, I think they're challenging the total number that you have on there. Probably the article says 55,000.
I think there was some things that were
Yeah,
standard
yes.
things were added.
Right.
Mr. Cushing?
Yeah. Yeah, it's, there was some other standard stuff that was added into that to come up with that, the other total.
Janet Moorhead.
Dues and
Yeah,
things like that.
I was on the committee, and like, we didn't look at the Humane Society because that is kind of like it's a contract that they do. In a way, I suppose you could say we were devil's advocates in that we looked and asked a lot of questions as to what different ways of people coming up with some of their figures, and trying to equalize out people so that you weren't really favoring one over the other, and recognizing that there are some things that are maybe more wants than needs, and in all of these, I mean, it's very difficult. Like, we had things like the Red Cross wanted us to give them 45 cents for every person in town, including all the college students. And so there's some you had to say, you know, maybe they could do their own fundraising. And we did have a person on that even worked for some of the nonprofits. And what people have to remember is that the town is under no obligation to give them any money. It's something that you decide to do basically out of the goodness of your heart and to help. And we tried to look at places where we thought there was more need, where like people needing their heat and things of that sort. So everyone had to tighten belts, and we do though think that having a standardized form would really help those looking after it. And we did find some other towns that had some very good ideas for standardized forms, because Some give you all kinds of information, some don't give so much. And a lot of the information that we get given really isn't that helpful. So we would like to come up with a form that would give us the information that we would find the most helpful.
Ms. Kent.
Which Kent from Plymouth. Asking a question about this Article 34 appears to be the sort of nonprofits. And my question is, in Article 20, Friends of the Arts was put into the departmental requests, and I'm wondering why the separation of Friends of the Arts, and it also appears that we're not being very supportive of the Friends of the Arts when they offer us some excellent programming in the area, and I'm just wondering why Friends of the Arts is not in this category but in the other.
I can tell you why it's only $200, and that's all they requested, was the $200. I'm sorry, that's all they requested. Whatever's on that line is all that they had requested, $100.
And I think there's another question on why that is separated from this.
Which in the past, they had asked for some money about 4 or 5 years ago. It was the same spot in the budget. It was already set up that way. That's where we put it. We're just being consistent to how it was done in the past.
Mr. Wood.
Before everybody leaves, can you all leave your voting things on the table over there so we can recycle them and not pay money for them next year, please?
Is there further discussion on Article 34? Bring us to a vote on Article 34 for payments to the below-listed agencies. All those in favor of Article 34, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say no. Article 34 passes.
Mr. Moderator, I
Yes.
move to restrict reconsideration of Articles 30 through 34.
Been moved and seconded to restrict reconsideration of Articles 30 to 34. That means we will not be able to modify those articles for the rest of the evening. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. The motion passes, so we now have restricted reconsideration through Article 34. Which brings us to Article 35, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,100 to initiate a professional survey of the town of Plymouth Tenny Mountain Conservation Parcel. The amount requested is to establish a fund for deed research, field reconnaissance, and the use of GPS and USGS maps to identify corner coordinates and to identify blazed lines. This effort is necessary as part of the parcel, as the parcel boundaries are unclear. Is there a motion? Article 35 has been moved and seconded. Does anyone wish to speak to it? Ms. Estes.
I'm Gisela Estes, and I have been serving on the Conservation Commission for a long time.
If you could speak right into the microphone.
Okay, thank you.
There you go.
I'm Gisela Estes. I have been serving on the Conservation Commission for quite a while, and several years back, I received a call from a man by the name of James Miller, who said that he had a parcel of land on Tenny Mountain that had been given to him by Sam Hall when he established the ski area in lieu of payment. And he didn't know what to do with the land. He didn't want it anymore. He didn't want to pay any taxes. And would the town of Plymouth we want to have it as a conservation piece. So the Conservation Commission talked to the selectmen, and the town has approved to take on this piece of land. Now our next project is to put some hiking trails in there. So 3 of us last early summer, went up there, and it's just a gorgeous piece of land with just beautiful trees and plants, and but we couldn't find the boundaries. The deed says that one corner is 40 stones from a tree that didn't exist anymore, and there are some inconsistencies, and so we decided we could not do anything with that land and not build any trails until we knew exactly where that land was. And so we are at a snag right now. We cannot proceed until we know exactly where the borders are, and we can walk them, and are absolutely sure that we are not putting trails on somebody else's land. Thank you.
Mr. Gosney.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Ray Gosney. Just a point of information. If I've done my math right, commencing with Article 9 through Article 34, there is a recommendation included with each one of those articles that specifies that the board recommends passage. And I'm wondering if there's any significance to the fact that there's no recommendation associated with Article 35.
Paul?
Mr. Gosney, this was the last warrant article that we had gotten before we sent it to the DRA. Next year, you will see that all warrant articles will no longer have under them recommendation by the Board of Selectmen. Either way, the DRA is taking that out. So when we had sent them this one, they just automatically left it out.
I guess the question, if I heard the question correctly, Mr. Gosney, it's your question.
Did not answer the question. Is there a significance why it is not here now?
It's just the way it gets sent back to us, Ray. No, you will not see them on any of the warrant articles recommended or not recommended by the Board of Selectmen. Although I would like to say at this time, it is in the Senate bill to try to undo what they did this year.
Perhaps if I could restate the question, does the board support this?
Yes.
Ms. Moorhead.
Any line that is drawn is got a person on either side of it. And have any of the abutters shown an interest in joining in on this in order to clarify some of their lines that as part of this whole survey and would maybe share in it?
Does somebody have an answer to Ms. Moorhead's question? Ms. Estes.
One boundary abuts the town of Dorchester, and we were told that there's some unclarity actually where the town line between Dorchester and Plymouth is. So I don't think there's any input from the town of Dorchester, and we can maybe check with the other abutters.
Mr. Ahern.
Yeah, Henry Ahern again. The only thing I just say, if they can get that property all done for $2,100, they must know a surveyor.
Is there further discussion on Article 35? That'll bring Article 35 to a vote. That is about the survey of the property on Tenny Mountain Conservation Parcel. All those in favor of Article 35 signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed signify by saying no. Article 35 passes. Mr. Kent.
As to other business that might come before the meeting, I've heard several people have had rounds of applause, and I think there are two groups that perhaps the town should also recognize. The first would be the public television group, with all of the programs that we see at home in terms of what happens. And the second one, and I think the library people also deserve a hand.
We are at the stage, if you want more discussion on the, what's that? Yes, Mr. Freitas would like to provide some clarity on a question that was asked earlier.
Mrs. Kent? Going through our notes, the reason why that $100 is with the Friends of the Arts. It's tied in with the Park and Recs lines. So if you look at the rest of the warrant article, you'll see it's mostly Park and Rec. So that's why it was left there. Band concerts, parades, Friends of the Art on the Common. That's what's been written in past notes.
We on Mr. Moorhead.
36 now?
What's that?
Are
Pardon?
we on 36 now?
We are on Article 36, which is any other business that may come before this meeting. And before we get very far, I would like to give, if the selectmen want to, put forward their request for a sense of, as many of us are left at the meeting as are still here, about their proposal on the firehouse. Is that a time that, would you like to take that opportunity? Patricia, you want to refresh our memory? And Mr. Moorhead, I'll get to you right after that.
Okay.
Sure. I would just open the floor for discussion on a sense of the meeting to see if the body will authorize the selectmen to pursue building a new fire station not to exceed the cost of $2 million, including site work on town-owned property near the police station.
Mr. Ahern. We're going to speak to this first, Mr. Moorhead.
That's what I'm here for.
Oh, certainly. I'll
I was
recognize you first.
anticipating.
Thank you. You're first.
Having been a firefighter years ago, and several of the people can attest to that, the fire station that we have now, it's got to be worse than it was when I was there. And when I was there in the wintertime, they had to drape plastic over the turnout gear, because more than once you'd run in there and put your feet into ice cold boots that were filled with ice water because the ceiling leaked. The major project to the building that was done to try to help with the heating problem, the permanent and the call firefighters worked their butts off to put the insulation in it and try to do something better with it. The sleeping quarters where the men and women, the personnel sleep, is up by the furnaces, and I don't know if you've ever tried to sleep next to a great big furnace or not, but it's difficult. If they get a night's sleep, if they don't get bothered by runs, they're lucky. There's many things in that station that need to be taken care of, and really the best thing to do would be to raise it to the ground and start over, because the building's just atrocious. And if we don't do something for these personnel and for our town to have a better safety service facility or whatever we're going to come up with, it really a disgrace to the town. This building is just absolutely terrible, and I'm certain that it's worse than it is when I was there. That's basically what I got to say about that. And the other thing I want to say is there's quite a few, the highway department, the police department, the fire department, when I had my knee replaced in June and stuff and got back to the house, they'd stop by and see how I was doing and stuff like this. If there was something not going right, they made sure that I got the help that I needed and stuff. And I want to thank all of those people for making sure that things went right on my street, even though they were pounding for 8 to 10 hours a night with a 70-ton sledgehammer, and I was supposed to get peace and quiet. The other question I want to bring up real quick to the selectmen is, when I was laid up and in my wheelchair all the time, because I wasn't allowed to get up and walk for quite some period of time, I tried to get into the town hall through the handicap access. It took me pretty near 20 minutes to reach over and get the door open, and I would like to see a handicap electric door opener put there so that a person in a wheelchair can come up and get that door open, because the weight of the door alone is just atrocious. Thank you.
Mr. Ahern.
Henry Ahern again. I just, on the sense of the meeting, I think if we could get a sense of the meeting would be fine. But when we voted way back on Article 14, there still was only 120 of us here voting. I think a better way to try and get the sense of the town rather than the sense of the meeting. We have the public television here. Put a survey up there to get people to respond. Put a survey on the website to get people to respond, and advertise the fact that it is there would get you a better sense of the town than the 120 people that are sitting here in this meeting.
Could I speak to that?
I'm going to let Mr. Kent speak, and then we'll.
Thank you, David Kent. I don't think we have to authorize you to investigate anything. I think that goes with the job. But what I would like you to bring us are alternatives and choices, and rather than this particular plan. And what this sense of the meeting that you've asked for sort of endorses one of a bunch of alternatives. I think we ought to explore, we ought to have an opportunity to say, let's spend more money and join everything together and build a whole new thing, or no, let's just keep patching up what we've been doing. Let us make some choices, informed choices. And I know that an awful lot of that homework's been done over the years. There've been committee after committee. By the way, I was a fireman too. And the place was rotten when I was there. So I'd much rather see that. I think we could talk much more intelligently as a group if we had some choices and alternatives put before us.
Mr. Cushing?
I just wanted to address Mr. Ahern's thing about where we introduced that at the meeting. That was strictly by our council, and the tax people said that's where we should put it. I mean, that was what our council recommended. That's what we're just following what they say.
Ms. Moorhead?
Janet Moorhead. Earlier, there was a lot of discussion and people looking back to what had been done. And what really wasn't addressed at that point is that $6-7 million one that was proposed. Both chiefs has retired since then. And what we haven't heard at all tonight is from our two new chiefs since that big complex was proposed. And until we hear from them as to what they feel, particularly the fire chief, as to how good that previous proposal was and what this one is, I don't think we can really say much.
Chief Clausen.
Janet, to answer your question, we did have a public hearing on the old plans, and I did speak to the people that were at that meeting on TV and explain to them the deficiencies that we found with that building, not to mention that there was no site to put the building on. And we thought it was best to take a better look at what we were going to actually propose. And I was told that there was a discussion that the town has never said to even allow us to do what we were doing. So that's why we're here bringing this question to you is, would you like us to pursue it? We're not going to build anything until the town has had their hearings and all that. There are a few members in the public that are on that committee, and it is still a very active committee, and we do have alternative plans, and the one that we're looking at is the one that is the priced to fit the tax base of Plymouth.
Mr. Wood?
All right. We've got a lot of serious problems that are happening in Plymouth for the whole town. Water, sewer, roads, sidewalks, all our infrastructure for water and sewer is in need of replacement. Nobody's sitting down and getting a time frame of what's needed, where it's needed, how it's needed. Everybody's grabbing for money from the taxpayer. The taxpayer doesn't have any money. When you see what the water and sewer is going to do to you and your rates and everything else, you're going to really cry. Not only that, but roads, I mean, it's a terrible state, but there's no overall supervision of where do we start. Do we allow so much for this, so much for this? Get together, sit down, let's start making a 10-year plan or a 5-year plan. The most important thing is a new town hall. Okay, I heard town hall, I heard library, I heard fire department, I heard police department. Tomorrow night is a big deal with the water and sewer. Nobody knows how we stand on these things. Nobody wants to spend money. Somebody's got to step up to the plate and say, in the next 10 years, this is the most important thing. This is the second most important. How are we going to get the money? What are we going to do? Nobody's coming up with a plan. Where's our plan? We wasted a lot of money the first time around,